Hi everybody, this is Chris Johnson again, and this will be episode 3 of reviewing this book right here called A Return to Common Sense, Reawakening Liberty in the Inhabitants of America by Tom Mullen. Before we begin, I have to say that I think I have figured out the simplicity of this book. This is going to be my last episode of reviewing this book because I don't feel there's any need to waste more time on it. The arguments I've made, Tom Mullen did end up responding to me in a private message that he wouldn't take out in public, and I have found out that not only is he's definitely lying on purpose, I'll tell you that, but he's not only is he doing that, he has a very corrupted system of morality that he actually states in the book. And unfortunately, though I don't like to bring forth anybody's private message, because he's not responding in anything publicly to this, I'm going to go ahead and bring forth some of the points he made in his private message, and you're going to see the corruption for yourself. So we will do that at the end if you want to stay tuned. Now, the bottom line is this. There's certain amounts of words that Tom Mullen never defines, okay? And I'm going to list off a few of those words to you. Defining a word, I mean, if you define basically the words that you're using in your argument, most of the time the argument's over. But the problem is, Tom Mullen said he's simplifying this book, and he stated that in his private message to me, but he's not. This isn't a simplified book at all. This is what we call a snow job, where the person talks on and on and on and thinks that they actually know what they talk about and have done real research, but their premise is terrible. It's wrong. So let me give you a few definitions of things he did not define, okay? Or not definitions of. I'm just going to give a list of things he didn't define. Now keep in mind, all the things I'm going to list to you, what he does, and when he attempts to define them in this book, he uses the words in the list to define the words in the list. It's circular reasoning. It's backwards. So it's an endless cycle. Number 1, right. He never defines. He doesn't define number 2, wrong. 3, good. Evil. Moral. Ethical. Rights, plural. Like, you know, the Declaration says are unalienable rights. He never defines. Liberty. He never defines. Individual liberty. Personal liberty. Virtue. Then there's a few other ones in here. There's some strange things he writes in here. One of them he refers to capital M, capital N, Mother Nature. Why is Mother Nature capitalized? If anybody watched our episode 2, we know that there's only 3 reasons that you capitalize a word. Okay, it's 1, it's the beginning of a sentence. 2, if it's a proper noun. Or 3, if it's a deity. What is this Mother Nature he's referring to? Another capitalized word, enlightenment philosophers. What does that mean? I mean, the Illuminati capitalize enlightenment. What is he referring to? He makes things very vague, and the more vague you are about things, the more complicated they get, not simplified. The only thing, if you're going to simplify something like that, it's not simplifying, it's brainwashing, okay? The only thing, if you're simplifying something by making it vague, the only people that are going to be satisfied that it's simple are people who are ignorant, who don't read anything, and who don't do any research. Those who actually research the topic are going to have a big problem with what you said, and it's going to make it far more complex and open up a lot more debate. But if you simply state where you're coming from, like I did in my, if anybody's watched my introductory video to this Creation Liberty channel, you'll see I state my stance. He said, and I quote him, in his private message, he said, the book is intentionally written to be simple. That's exactly what the media will say. They say that they'll take this 2-minute segment, oh, this segment, we're just making it simple for the people. Because we have a limited amount of time, so we have to make it as simple as possible. No, that's not what they're doing. Anybody that has watched any kind of mainstream media obviously knows that they're not making things simple, they're brainwashing people. Now, let me give you an example of brainwashing. If you really don't understand what it is, a more simplistic definition of brainwashing would be simply remove key pieces of information and let the brain fill them in on its own. Your brain is an incredibly powerful tool, incredibly powerful machine, and it will try to logically fill in blanks and logically fill in holes if you don't do it consciously, subconsciously it will do it on its own. Let me give you an example. I'm going to brainwash you, the viewer, right now. Okay? I'm going to tell you a story, then I'm going to ask you a couple questions and see if you can answer the questions. Okay? After I brainwash you, I'm going to unbrainwash you, and then you'll see how the process works. Okay? Here we go. Here's the story. A man left home jogging. He jogged a little ways and turned left. He jogged a little ways and turned left. He jogged a little ways and turned left, and then he jogged back home. Once he arrived, there were two masked men waiting for him. Okay, now the two questions. One, why did the man leave home jogging? And second, who were the masked men waiting for him? You should already know. Now, here's the question. If you have no idea, and you really can't answer them properly, or answer them, directly, and you're like, well, they might be this, you've been successfully brainwashed. I just brainwashed you. In a second, I'm going to unbrainwash you, but let me explain what happened. Your mind automatically, well, a man left home jogging, he jogged a little ways and turned left and left and left like he did. And you're thinking, well, why would somebody leave home jogging? Well, typically it's for exercise, why a lot of people leave home jogging, so he probably jogged around the block. Okay? When he got home, there were two masked men waiting for him. Well, who would typically wear a mask going into somebody's home like that? Well, typically it's a robber, is what we would think. So you've already imagined this in your mind. Now I'm going to give you two words, and I'm going to successfully unbrainwash you by giving you the key fundamental information. Baseball diamond. A man left home jogging. He jogged a little ways and turned left. He jogged a little ways, turned left, jogged a little ways and turned left, and he jogged back home. When he got home, there were two masked men waiting for him. Okay? Why did the man leave home jogging? Because he's running the bases. And who were the masked men? The catcher and the umpire. See, before I gave you the key fundamental information, you had no idea what the answers to the questions were, because you had been successfully brainwashed. This book, right here, it will do exactly that. It's going to successfully brainwash people without telling them the fundamental key pieces of information. And all these words that I listed there are part of the fundamental key principles that he repeatedly uses in this book, and refers to them as if it's truth, as if it's fact, and he doesn't define these things at all. He wants you to fill it in on your own and just go with it. He wants you to agree with his opinion, and that's what he's trying to get out there. He's trying to gather a majority opinion to make what he's saying in this book magically true, and it's not going to happen that way. Okay? What I have done in this video is simplified, and I'm going to finish it in this last one, is simplified his premise, okay, that he made very vague. And it's extremely flawed. But what he's done in this book, let me explain to you, give you an example of what he's done. Let's say I make the statement, African elephants are orange. Okay? Then what I do is I write a long book, like this one. I write a book, and I state, and look out charts and get quotes from people about elephants, and I do all these experiments and say scientifically why African elephants' orange skin helps them in certain conditions to survive. You're going to say, wait a second, why are you writing this book and making all these complex things? Elephants aren't orange. Exactly my point. He starts out claiming certain things, but that's not true. And then he continues on to write chapter after chapter after chapter of stuff that is based on nothing. He hasn't said anything yet. So there's some principles he gives in here that, from what I have analyzed after I have answered these questions, I can agree with. But I can't agree with Tom Mullen on anything until he provides the fundamental information to keep us from being brainwashed, and that is the key. Okay? Let me cover a couple more things that he puts in this book, because these are things that you people need to know. You need to see what he's doing here. Okay? This one that I'm going to put down here, we're just going to cover two more things in here, and then I'm going to get to his response, and then we should be done. Okay?